G'day guys, Solid here. Hope you're all doing well and welcome back to another episode of Adventure News. We've got plenty of great topics. I want to talk about BMW's R1300GS, MV Agusta's 9.5 adventure bike, big news from Ducati and their off-road aspirations, Royal Enfield's 452 that's set to be released on the 7th of November, and of course I want to talk about Suzuki's new variant of the VStrom 800. So secretly in the background, unbeknownst to anyone, is Ducati for the last 2 years has been working on an MX and off-road project, not telling a soul. They've just dropped a teaser video, the CEO is talking about it. They've also got 9-time world champion Antonio Caroli, sorry if I butchered that last name. He's on board helping develop this motorcycle, so they've definitely got pedigree in the development here. They're intending to enroll in the 2024 Italian Motocross Championships. They're not messing about, and they said that they're focusing initially on MX and then they will be moving into further lineups like enduro bikes, but they haven't said any other kind of off-road motorcycles. All they said was they're getting into the off-road motorcycle scene. That is very encouraging news and sounds a lot like what Triumph are doing at the moment. So I'm super happy that we're getting multiple new fresh manufacturers, fresh blood with new ideas and new concepts. Now, like I always say, my tinfoil hat immediately goes to maybe we'll see a dual sport from Ducati one day, or at least something like the KTM 500 EXC, something that we can turn into an ultralight adventure bike. That would be absolutely amazing. There isn't really any other details other than that. It's just a teaser video. The thought is that we'll probably see a 450cc MX bike as the first bike, as those are the rumors coming out of Italy. But that's it for now, just full of excitement and hope, and I can't wait to see what Ducati have in store for us. We know that it's coming out on the 7th of November. Now, I did a specific video covering how Itchy Boots is currently riding the 452 through India up into the Himalayas. It's just amazing, so please check out her video series because the scenery and her adventures are just epic. But she's also made a few comments along the way about the bike. She is under a non-disclosure, so she can't talk about anything specific, but she's touched on how the suspension is superior to the 411.
Oh, the suspension on this bike is a lot better, than on the previous version. This one is quite a bit stiffer. I could actually even adjust it a little bit because there are 7 positions you can put the suspension.
We get a good look at the dash, and in the latest videos it looks like you can change that up and select what you want shown up on the dash. She's also talked about how the 452 feels roughly double the power of the 411.
It's a lot more powerful. I don't know exactly how much horsepower this bike has. Feels like I have like almost double the power.
It all seems to be fitting together to confirm that homologation leaked document and the rumors that have been swirling this bike. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the weight. We don't know that for sure. In the homologation details, they only talked about the gross vehicle weight or the gross vehicle mass, and that's the bike fully fueled with accessories and 2 passengers, the maximum load that the bike can carry. So that didn't really give us any detail as to how much this bike will weigh. But if you subtract roughly 2 riders at say 60-70 kilos, I think we're sitting roughly around just under 200 kilo mark. Now that really divides people into 2 categories. You got one category that are quite happy with that. They just want a really approachable adventure bike that's got features that are updated from the 411, like the power and the suspension, but they're not really looking for hardcore off-road performance. And I think those people are going to be very, very happy with this bike. The other side of this is the pie in the sky people, myself included. I'd love to see this bike crack sub 170 kilos. That would make it an absolute weapon and a real contender against the 390 from KTM. But I really am not too confident that Royal Enfield are going to go that way because that would really jack up the price. Royal Enfield aren't particularly known for their super lightweight motorcycles either, so I tend to gravitate with it being the heavier option. It's going to disappoint some people. I'd love to know your thoughts either way. Are you excited for this bike? Chuck your thoughts down below and I'll keep you updated as soon as the specs drop on the 7th of November. Next up, we've got news that MV Agusta are bringing their production-ready 9.5 Lucky Explorer to the big motorcycle shows at the end of the year. We finally get to see this in its fully formed, ready-to-go package. There's a lot of people excited about this 9.5. The other little interesting tidbit, as I talked about, CEO Stefan Pierre of the Pierre Mobility Group, which is the KTM conglomerate, he is really exerting influence on MV Agusta at the moment because they have a 25.1% stake in MV Agusta now. They also handle MV Agusta's distribution in North America, so they're quite intertwined as companies these days. And Stefan Pierre, he really didn't like the idea of the 5.5, and sure enough, a few months later, it looks like that is getting cancelled, or at least put on hold. And he also made the comment that he didn't think the Lucky Explorer name was a good idea because it was too close to the cigarette company Lucky Strike, which was paying homage to. He wanted that to be ditched, and on the registration for the international motorcycle shows, MV Agusta's Lucky Explorer is just listed as a 9.5 adventure bike. So we could indeed be seeing a name change, which shows you just how much influence KTM is exerting over MV Agusta. That's a really interesting dynamic and has certain implications moving into the future. Either way, I think this will be a really interesting bike entering into the middleweight lineups, giving people a real premium Italian off-road option other than the Multistrada. This will be pretty popular, I think, or at least a cult classic among those people who adore MV Agusta. And just as I'm editing this, KTM has announced their intention to buy a controlling stake in MV Agusta, so that is big news if that goes through. The Pierre Mobility Group are collecting motorcycle manufacturers like the damn Pokemon at the moment. Love to know your thoughts about how this is all unraveling.
Start it up.
Next up, we got Suzuki's VStrom 800. We have a road touring version that I talked about that was in the works, has finally been released, and it looks to be back to Suzuki's roots. This is what made the VStrom so famous and such a cult classic. It's just a fantastic, affordable adventure tourer. Of course, they've got the 19-inch front wheel, cast wheels as well, ditching the spoke wheels to make it perform better on the road. You're getting 185 millimeters of travel instead of 220 mils, so that's 8.7 inches instead of 220 mils on the DE, that's the off-road version. Seat height is also lower, so the shorties will be happy. It's 825 mils, which is 32.5 inches, which is 30 mil lower than the off-road version. It's also 7 kilos lighter than the off-road version, which is very interesting. You would think Suzuki would put the effort into trying to make the off-road version lighter. So we're looking at 223 kilos or 492 pounds. So it'll also be more affordable. I think this is a fantastic option. As I said, I really think this is Suzuki's wheelhouse with the VStrom, so it'll be making a lot of VStrom diehards very happy that they're getting the adventure tourer that they've come to know and love. Love to know your thoughts, so chuck them down below. I didn't cover it when it first came out because I had so much to talk about over the last couple of months. There's always an incremental improvement and it's a bit of a yawn fest. But this time's a little bit different. The 1300GS is a major departure from the old design. All the specs are fairly impressive. You get all the techno wizardry you'd want. Of course, an increase in power, 145 horsepower and 105 foot-pounds of torque. So definitely a torquey, powerful beast that we've come to know and love with the big GS. So it's gonna do GS things, and the big one I'm excited about is the weight reduction. They've been able to manage to save over 11 kilos or 26 pounds off the outgoing 1250. So we now see the bike at 237 kilos, which is fantastic. That's really impressive, and especially considering they've done the same with the F900GS that's come out. So I just wanted to comment and really encourage BMW and say thank you for going back in the right direction. We've been seeing big adventure bikes getting heavier and heavier, which has really frustrated me because that's not what you want when you're heading off-road. So the fact that they've turned around and they're trending in the right direction again and recognize that weight is important to a lot of their customers, I think it's fantastic. Great to see this new trend from BMW. Hopefully this spreads through the industry and we start to see them paying attention to dropping weight on these big adventure bikes. We've also got a pretty big departure in the looks department as well. Just like the F900GS was a big departure from what the 850 looks like, so is this 1300GS. It looks very different to the 1250 and all the BMWs that preceded it. Still has some of that BMW GS-ness, but it is a very modern design. So I'd love to know your thoughts on the looks. And now we get to honorable mentions. This is a new section for Adventure News. It's kind of a rapid fire system where I can get through stories that don't really need a whole segment, but I still want to cover them in a brief fashion. Starting with the Ducati Desert X Rally, a more off-road capable version of the standard Desert X. The big story here really is in the suspension. We're getting beefier suspension, 48mm cartridges, increased travel to 250 mils at the front and 240 mils at the rear. The rear gets some work over as well, so beefed up suspension on both ends, increasing clearance to 280 mils, which is pretty impressive for an adventure bike. Really, the rest of the stuff is all bolt-on accessory stuff that you can get from Ducati already. The other notable change is the standard steering damper on the Ducati Desert X Rally, so that will be a big improvement, particularly if you're doing quite a bit of deep sand. We've also got the return of a cult classic, the Moto Guzzi Stelvio, their big flagship adventure bike. It went away for a while, but now it's back. I'm sure that'll make a lot of Moto Guzzi fans very happy. 113 horsepower and 77 foot-pound of torque. You also get a big 21-litre tank. And this Stelvio will be at the motorcycle shows next month, so we'll get all the juicy details then about this big adventure bike. And lastly, I wanted to follow up on spy shots of the single-cylinder Ducati motard that I talked about last month. We've got Ducati officially teasing a single-cylinder motor, saying it's the most high-performance single-cylinder 650cc engine on the market. Bold claims, but super exciting. Looking in the future, if they've got a motard, hopefully they'll look at what KTM has done and give us a really nice 650cc dual sport. Who wouldn't want to see the most high-performance 650 dual sport the off-road world has ever seen? So that's it for this episode of Adventure News. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. Like, share, and subscribe. And as always, don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll see you in the next one.